Hi, I'm Dale Fowler. I'm president of the Victoria Economic Development Corporation. You know, our primary mission at VEDC is to attract new businesses to our community so that we can increase the tax base and also add new job opportunities for the citizens of Victoria and the surrounding region. One of the primary and very important assets we have in our community is the Port of Victoria and the Victoria Barge Canal. I have with me today Robert Lowe, chairman of the Victoria County Navigation District. And Robert, give us a little history about the Port of Victoria and the Victoria Barge Canal.
Thank you, Dale. Most people don't realize that the original idea for the Intercoastal Waterway Navigation District that goes all the way from Brownsville to the tip of Florida, a protected waterway for commerce, was originally birthed in Victoria, Texas. So we're very proud of that in Victoria, that in downtown Victoria in 1905, the idea of a protected waterway was dreamed up here. I think that people need to understand that the Barge Canal is a partnership of lots of people. We have to have support from Washington. We also have the Corps of Engineers, who's our partner, and then the Victoria County Navigation District is a local sponsor of the canal. I also like to recognize our longtime customers, people who've been with us from day one and support the canal, which is in both Invista and Fordyce.
Because ports do seem to be a national focus these days. I understand that Inside Business with Fred Thompson and Fox News recently did a profile of the Port of Victoria. Is that correct?
Yes, they did.
What I understand from watching the video the first time, that most all of the pictures from the beginning throughout the presentation are actually of the Port of Victoria.
We were pleased that Fox News thought it was newsworthy to come talk about the Port of Victoria and did a very nice piece that got to be shown nationally and regionally, which was a great recognition that the people cared about what we were doing down here.
That's great. Let's watch that report.
In our rapidly evolving world, success is defined by turning challenges into opportunities. With enough foresight and ingenuity, the complex problems of today can become the achievements of tomorrow. I'm Fred Thompson. From business and technology to healthcare and the environment, join me as we take a closer look inside the workings of the modern global economy. Welcome to Inside Business. I'm Fred Thompson, and I'm Inside Business. Establishing and maintaining a presence in today's global economy can become a nightmare without the tools to properly manage an organization. Let's learn what's being done to ensure that supplies are in position to meet demand.
For centuries before planes, trains, and trucks, everything from goods to textiles was brought in by freight ships. Ports were, and still are today, the most valuable points of entry for importing and exporting goods. Texas ranks number 2 in waterborne commerce in the U.S. Texas ports create nearly 1 million jobs, generating $48 billion in personal income. The Texas portion of the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway handles 75 million tons of cargo annually.
80% of all cargo comes into this country by ship. And anything that is too large or too heavy to ship by airplane or truck will go by barge. An example is liquid petroleum products. You can ship it by truck at a rate of about 6,000 gallons per truck, or you can load it on a barge at 300 to 500,000 gallons per barge. And of course you can put 6 barges in a single tow and bring them right into the Port of Victoria, and that's a lot of cargo.
The U.S. Inland Waterway System is one of the busiest and most efficient transportation systems in the world. Shallow draft ports move over 1.2 billion tons of cargo annually. The Port of Victoria is one of the busy shallow draft ports in the state of Texas.
FCEC brings in dry and liquid fertilizer from domestic and foreign manufacturers. We work through a number of ports in New Orleans, Houston, where we ship our grain by barge, and we can also bring in various fertilizers from domestic and international manufacturers. So it really is a great asset to take advantage of here.
According to the Texas Transportation Institute, the cost of 1 gallon of fuel will move 1 ton of cargo 155 miles by truck, as compared to 413 miles by rail and 576 miles by barge.
As a global producer of nylon intermediate chemicals, Invista's partnership with the Port of Victoria is critical to our operations here in Victoria. In our opinion, the United States needs both deep draft ports for import and export efficiencies, as well as shallow draft ports like the Port of Victoria to serve as distribution points for both inbound and outbound commodities. The benefit of the Port of Victoria is that it is not inhibited by the congestion issues that are facing many of the major ports in the United States.
Conveniently near 3 major railroads, Port of Victoria also has access to a regional airport and several state and interstate highways. Once large shipments of cargo arrive into the port, it can be stored or separated into smaller shipments and transported virtually anywhere in the world. With over 2,000 acres of available land that can be built to suit any new development, space is not an issue.
Recently, we had a power generation company come to us, and within 90 days, we were able to find them a site, get them financing, build them a 36,000-foot building, including a 30-ton crane, and they were up and going with 100 employees. We were also able to get them over $100,000 tax incentive to help their business, and of course, they had rail and water access available to them.
For shippers and tenants, the Port of Victoria and its connection to the 35-mile barge canal offers an unparalleled option for transporting goods.
Almost 70% of all of the cargo that comes into our deepwater ports originates or terminates in a shallow draft barge port such as the Port of Victoria. Now, we believe that we're helping the country by relieving some of the truck traffic and therefore relieving some air pollution. It also greatly reduces the wear and tear on our highway system. And of course, the benefit that my clients like the best, it saves them money.
Put in the pipeline.
A little bit of history. Back in 1946, we created the Victoria County Navigation District. It was created by legislation. There was a bond issue in 1947 so they could extend the waterway to Victoria. And again, what we have is a 35-mile connection to the Intercoastal Waterway so that we can actually load barges or unload barges in Victoria and take that product anywhere in the world. In 1953, history tells us there was a ceremony at the Union Carbide docks for the opening of those docks. People don't realize it, but the reason we have now Dow, used to be Union Carbide, and we have Invista, and the petrochemical plants we have is the canal. The reason why they're here is they're able to either bring in feedstock or ship out products economically, and the waterway makes that possible. In 1958, we started the final construction of the final miles down to Victoria. And then in 1965, the actual turning basin opened. And again, that's about right down next to Invista, about 7 miles from the city of Victoria. Also very importantly, and again, there have been many commissioners, many citizens of Victoria that have been on the commission over the years that have helped this thing grow. In 1988, my father-in-law David Engel was on the commission. At that point, they brought rail to on port property, and that was really very important. And that took a lot of foresight and planning to bring rail to that property. And I'll come back to that and talk about that because you have to have infrastructure to build infrastructure on top of to have success in the future. And bringing that rail in 1988 was very important. In 1992, there was a bond issue to widen and deepen the canal. The general intercoastal waterway is 125 feet wide and 12 feet deep. Our canal, the 35-mile connection to Victoria, was really only about 100 feet wide and 9 feet deep. That may not sound like a big difference, but that is a big difference if you're loading a barge and you have 3 feet less that you can load. So we had a bond issue in 1992 to widen and deepen that. And the way it works is the local sponsor has to put up 10% of the money, and then the federal government puts up the other 90%. Well, the bond issue failed. People didn't really understand how important it was. Then a group of people got together and they had a education campaign, and then it passed 2-to-1 later in 1994, so that we passed bonds so we could pay our 10% to widen and deepen the canal. That project got finished in about 2002, 2003. So it tells you how long it takes to get these projects done. And by the way, those bonds will be off in 2014 as well. So that's some of the history that got us going with the Port of Victoria.
You know, it's interesting, Robert, because those companies that you mentioned, Union Carbide, now Dow, and Invista, DuPont, who are all using the Victoria Barge Canal, are very important still today in our local economy, and their continued viability and growth is going to be important to our economy in the future. But not just them, some of the new companies that may come here because of the Victoria Barge Canal and the Port of Victoria. What are some of the new things that are going on at the Port of Victoria to provide new infrastructure that might attract new companies?
Well, we're very excited about the things that are going on at the port. And again, I'm going to bring the history forward if I can. In 1998, we had a watershed moment, if you will. Lee Swearingen became chairman of the port. Paul Guthrie was on, and I went on. The three of us, who were all businessmen, thought if we were going to actually make things happen for the Port of Victoria and for Victoria, then we need to have an executive director. Up until then, Munson Smith is our attorney and Billy Settles is our district engineer, had been wonderful people working for the port. But ultimately, any organization, if you're really going to get something done, you need to have your first paid employee that's a staff. And so the three of us, all of who were pretty comfortable running businesses, said we need to have an executive director. We looked at the Port of Victoria. We said this is an asset of the county and of the taxpayers. It's our responsibility to make that asset pay off. And what paying off means was adding tax base and adding employees. And that's really what we're all about. So in 1998, we went on a search and we hired Howard Hawthorne, who was a fabulous executive director. He was our first executive director, and he was there for about 8 years. That was a big deal. That was a watershed moment, bringing somebody on. Coming forward chronologically, Dale, in 2002, I commented the dredging got completed, so we were now matching the rest of the canal at 12 feet and 125 feet wide. And we also built a building for Johnson Manufacturing. That was Howard's first tangible real success, is that he found Johnson Manufacturing, which was a company that needed to have a building in Victoria. They were in the power equipment business, and the port, in a very short period of time, was able to build that building for them. We financed that. It got done in about 90 days, and eventually they bought the building back from the port. It was a very successful deal for us. The building is still out there today. Valeris is there, and they have a lot of employees out there. So that was a very important thing in terms of bringing tax base and bringing jobs. In 2003, we looked at the port, and we thought that it would give us a competitive advantage if we could permit people to be able to bring heavy loads from our property down to the turning basin. We had property on 1432, and we thought that if we could permit those people to load containers, that one day we would be a container port, and we'd be able to bring those containers down to the port. So we went to Austin, and we got legislation passed that allowed us to be able to permit those heavy loads. That's important. I'm going to come back to that 2003 legislation. In 2005, we built our office out of the port. And again, fortunately, the Coast Guard needed a new office in Victoria, and we were able to work a deal where the Coast Guard takes about half the building and the other half of the building is for the port. Well, that gave us a significant presence on the turning basin, which was a lot better than being in an office building in downtown Victoria. So now we had an office out there at the turning basin. We have the Coast Guard, who's also a partner of ours right next door to us, and that was important. We also, in 2005, El Campo Co-op needed a new facility, and they wanted access to rail, and they wanted access to water, and so they came to the port, and we put a facility out of the port for El Campo Co-op, or we leased them the property so they could put in their own facility. That's been very important. Ranchers in the area now have a way to move their product through waterway if they want to. 2007 was a very important year. And again, our mayor, Will Armstrong, had the great idea that there was property called the O'Connor Tract, about 1,800 acres on the other side of Invista. And that property in the 80s was bought with the idea that it would be a petrochemical plant. And basically that didn't come to pass, and the property was there. And Will's idea was, he came to Lee Swearingen and said, this 1,800 acres is available, and it can be bought probably at the same price that it was bought for 20 years ago. With it comes some water rights. The city would like the water rights. So Lee, Port, what I propose to you guys is y'all go let the port buy the 1,800 acres, be great for economic development, turn around and the city will buy the water rights because we want the water rights, and that will lower your cost significantly. So we did that, and that was a great addition. And again, I'm going to come back to how well that's paid off. But so we bought the 1,800 acres, we turned around in the same day, sold the water rights to the city, and now we have that property in our development pool. In 2008, we needed money for capital improvements. And there are two ways that governmental agencies like the port can get capital improvements through bonding. One is general obligation bonds, and that's when you're using your taxing ability to support the bond, like we did in 1994, or the other is a revenue bond. And a revenue bond means basically you go to Wall Street and you say, I have this stream of revenue, and I can leverage that to pay off debt over the next 10 or 15 years. How much debt can I have? Well, we decided to go the revenue route because we had the revenues from our customer. So we did a $6 million bond issue in 2008, a revenue bond. And the main things we did with that money, the first thing we did was we fixed the railroad bridge. There's a mechanical lift bridge out there that we're responsible for, and that was about a $3.5 to $4 million 25-year overhaul of the bridge, a very major project for us to do. The other big thing we did with the $6 million is we put in a liquid cargo dock. What a liquid cargo dock, it's an 800-foot dock on the canal, a place where liquid products can be moved across. Now, interestingly enough, we didn't have any customers for that dock. But every year we do a planning retreat. And every year when we sit around and talk about what do we need to do, the liquid cargo dock was talked about. So when we did the bond, and we had excess capital for that, we said, let's put in the liquid dock. Well, I'm happy to say that we put in the liquid dock in 2009 without one customer. And today, with Eagle Ford Shale, that liquid dock is basically full, and we're talking about building another second liquid dock. But again, you had to have the liquid dock in place to be able to take the business later. When a business comes to you and wants to be in business where you are, you need to have the infrastructure in place. You have to have made the planning and the investment of dollars to make that happen. So 2009, I'm going chronologically forward. We're spending our $6 million because the bridge project was a major project for a year to get that thing done. We extended the rail to the turning basin. Remember I told you back in 1998, my father-in-law, when he was on the commission, and the other commissioners at that time, put rail, but it didn't go all the way to the turning basin. Well, we had a customer, Equalizer, who wanted rail at the turning basin. So we did kind of a private-public partnership with Equalizer to help fund that. They paid for a portion of it, and we paid for a portion of it. But what it did is it let us take the rail from where it was on port property all the way to the water side, and that was a very important thing to do. So we did fix the bridge, we did the rail extension, we did the liquid dock. In 2010, we got together with the other regional ports and we said, you know guys, we need to work together on things. We thought that was important. We also started talks with Caterpillar about container on barge. We have been talking about letting Victoria be a container dock for years, and Howard, that was one of Howard's ideas. When Caterpillar was coming to town and we found out more and more about Caterpillar's need, we thought that was a good fit with the port. People don't realize it, but Caterpillar is going to bring between 6,000 and 10,000 containers a year into their plant out at Lone Tree. That is an assembly plant. That means they're going to be assembling these parts that are going to come from all over the world. And again, how are those parts going to get to that plant? And that's still something that a lot of people at Caterpillar are working on. We think and we hope that a lot of those parts are going to come through the Port of Victoria. To support that, what we did in 2011 is, remember that heavy haul road that we passed in 2003? In other words, we had legislation that allows us to be able to permit a heavy load. What that means is, if you're going to take more than 80,000 pounds over the road at a given time, you have to have a permit that basically comes from TxDOT. Well, what we did is we became, the Port of Victoria got to be the issuing body on the permit. All the same rules apply. You still have to have the same number of axles. You still have to have the same number of weight supported. But basically, we would issue the permit, and business finds it much easier to deal with the Port of Victoria than having to go, say, to Austin every day to get these permits. So in 2011, we decided to extend our heavy haul road. And it was a lot easier and legislation to extend an existing heavy haul road than to have a new heavy haul road. That is a much easier sell in Austin to get legislation done. So we hired Mike Sizemore to help us, and we worked very hard to get that legislation extended. And we were successful in creating a heavy haul route all the way from Caterpillar at Lone Tree to the Port of Victoria, also importantly, by the way, over to that 1,800 acres. And I'll come back to that. So that legislation is in place that basically is setting up the ability for Caterpillar to be able to receive heavy loads over the waterway and then haul them out to Lone Tree. We think that's very important. The other thing that happened in 2011 is Eagle Ford Shale hit us in a big way, in a very positive way. So when I talk about what's going on at the port these days, I talk about two things. I talk about the impact of Eagle Ford Shale, and I talk about Caterpillar and containers. Let me talk a little bit about Eagle Ford Shale. What moves over the waterway is large products in bulk. That's what the waterway does very well. It moves it slowly, but it moves it consistently. It moves it environmentally friendly, and it also uses a small amount of energy. You can move a lot more product per gallon of fuel over water than over rail, over truck, etc. And when you think about Eagle Ford Shale, there's a natural fit. So there's two products that have come to the port via Eagle Ford Shale. And again, we have two customers right now that are bringing sand into the port for frac sand. We have a Mexican company called Crew Logistics that has leased 20 acres from us, and they're bringing in sand by rail, and then they're trucking it out to the drilling sites. And that's a great customer because we get the 20-acre lease, and we also get a wharfage of all the sand that comes in over the rail. And then we also have Equalizer, our fertilizer company, is also bringing sand in by barge, and there's about 1,500 tons per barge. Actually, I talked to the owner yesterday. They've now done 137 barges. If you think about that, that's a lot of sand. They're doing 1 to 2 barges a day where they're bringing in frac sand by water, putting it in their facility, and they're loading it into trucks and hauling it to the well site. So that is a very viable business going on from the port. All this sand coming in, meeting the needs of the oil field industry. And so that's good for the port because that produces some revenue from us, produces jobs. Remember, we wanted jobs and tax base, and we're getting that. Last I heard, Equalizer had an additional 15 people to deal with their sand business. The other thing that we found out is that refineries that refine crude oil like to receive their oil by barge. So now we have 2 customers and about to have a 3rd customer, over 100 trucks a day, and it's being shipped out by barge out of the Port of Victoria. I've not seen the numbers for March, but I know in February we were right under 1 million barrels of oil. So if you think about that, a barge is about 25,000 barrels. That's 45 barges a month are going out of the Port of Victoria of oil. So these trucks are coming in and they're dropping their load. And we have 2 customers currently doing it, Geo Southern and Gulf Mart. And then we have a 3rd customer that is we've contracted with and is going to also be putting in a tank farm. And again, there'll be tank farms and there'll be pipes and all that. Right now we've got them doing it on a mobile operation. But so we're moving, at least 1 million barrels of oil a month out of the port. And that's very exciting too. So Eagle Ford Shale is happening. And now back to Caterpillar and containers. I tell people how exciting containers are. We've been talking about containers at the port for 7 or 8 years, if you go back to Howard Hawthorne. When I talk about, what we're talking about is a once a week or twice a week barge service from the Port of Houston. Containers will come in from all over the world to the Port of Houston for Lone Tree. And what we're working with Caterpillar and other partners is to get those containers put on a barge and brought down to the Port of Victoria. And think about it, you'd much rather have those containers coming over the waterway than coming down 59. Right. There'd be a lot of heavy containers on 59. And for these containers that are overweighted, you can load them on a barge and bring them to Victoria, and then we can permit it and haul it out. Remember, because we have our permit to do that. That makes a lot more sense than getting a permit to haul it down from Houston and put it on 59. So we're working with Caterpillar to do that. We're excited about that because we look at it think about the first time they run the Railroad West about how that opens up the West for commerce, or the first time they run a mail service or a new mail route, what that does. I mean, we think that adding containers on barge, you know, Dale and Adrian are doing a great job of selling Victoria, but we know that when we have weekly or maybe even twice a week container service regularly to Victoria, it's going to let there be all sorts of new business opportunities for Victoria. Let me go back to that 1,800 acres. You know, we bought that 1,800 acres in 2007, and to start putting infrastructure on that is very expensive, so you've got to have a reason to do it. Well, now, for a long time, our container dock, which is in the planning stage, was going to be down at the turning basin. Well, what's happened is, with all this Eagle Ford Shale activity, the turning basin's pretty darn busy. As a matter of fact, there are days when you could almost walk across the turning basin. There's so many barges there. So dealing with that traffic is difficult, and we had the bright idea at a mid-year planning session, why don't we put the container dock down on the 1,800 acres? On that 1,800 acres, we have about a mile of frontage on the canal. We're working with another partner to put a fleeting operation down there. And what a fleeting operation is basically it's a big parking lot. And what that means is they'll cut out a big section of land, maybe 1,000 to 1,500 feet long and about 400 foot deep, wide, okay? And that will become a parking lot for barges. We have so much activity with the sand, with the oil, that these barges have to have a place to park, and that's called fleeting. So now what we're looking at doing, and we're in the planning stages of putting a container dock down there and also putting a fleeting operation, all on the 1,800 acres. Very important to be able to get some money, get some infrastructure put into that. So those are the exciting things that are happening there. We think the future is very bright. There's rail service on the front part of that property. We think that's important. So if there's rail service on the 1,800 acres, there's going to be water service on the 1,800 acres, and there's going to be fleeting there. There's trucks nearby. It's all pretty exciting.
Robert, you know, one of the things that we have learned, especially from the Caterpillar project, is that if there's anything that major manufacturers need, it's logistics. The projects really depend more on their ability to move supplies and supply chain logistics. Everything that the port is putting in place is very significant, and I believe as we perfect those assets, the container on barge, the fleeting area, the railroad access, those are going to be great marketing assets that then Adrian and I at VEDC, as we're traveling around the country talking to these manufacturers, they're going to want part of that action. And so we appreciate everything that the commissioners are doing to continue to improve that infrastructure at the Port of Victoria.
Well, we're excited. Now, I do want to point out that I'm here representing the port, but one of the things we also did is that in 2007, there were 3 commissioners on the commission. And we decided that, you know, the port had so many activities that we needed more resources. So we had legislation, we worked on legislation to get the commission expanded to 5 people. So actually there are now 5 people, and I'm here representing the port, but I mean, Robbie Burgett is a commissioner, Elton Calhoun is a commissioner, Claude Jacobs is a commissioner, and Kevin Kruger is a commissioner. Everybody works hard for no pay, but we're all very supportive, and we think it's great community work. So the community has supported the navigation district for 40 or 50 years, and it's exciting to see all the planning and investment come together. It's really very exciting. I mean, you know, you work hard, and then you see it all come together, as with the Caterpillar project, Dale.
Right.
You guys worked for hard at Lone Tree, and then all of a sudden, got the big home run. We kind of feel like the port's going that way too.
Absolutely.
And the 1,800 acres is very exciting. The container dock is exciting.
Well, hats off to the commissioners for the leadership that you provide in developing and maintaining that asset for us, and as you mentioned, for very little pay. And thank you for your volunteerism. Now, you volunteer in some other areas of our community, and you know, the physical assets, that 1,800 acres, the infrastructure with rail and barge transportation are very important for us to be able to use as an attraction tool to get companies to Victoria, to consider Victoria as a place to invest and create jobs. That gets them here. Then we have to sell them on the whole package. And one of the big issues that we have going on in this community is the ability to be able to train the workforce. And I know Caterpillar is training employees right now. Some of the other companies that we're talking to almost always workforce development and employee training becomes an important part of what they look at in a community before they're willing to invest in our community. Victoria College right now has an initiative to build a new training facility, which I believe is going to be a very important part of what we have to offer in this community if we want to continue to attract jobs. Do you want to say a little bit about that initiative? Because I know you're working with some folks that are promoting that.
Right. Well, again, the port's very excited that Victoria College has had the vision and done the planning and sees the need for a training center, an emerging technology and training center. Again, the community has to invest in these resources to make things happen. You know, I tell people, and I believe this, and again, I wasn't in the car deal, you were, but you know, in 2006 we passed a bond issue, and the community decided to invest $160 million in public education. That was a great investment by the community in public education. I don't have any doubt in my mind that when you and Dale were driving around the Caterpillar, people, and you go on that loop, and you can show 2 brand new high schools being built, that doesn't have an impact on people trying to make a decision to come to Victoria. You know, it's one thing to talk the talk, but it's another thing to walk the walk. And basically, when you say we're building new high schools, and we're going to have every young man and woman in Victoria that goes to public high school is going to go to a new high school starting in 2009. That's a very exciting thing. So the community invested in that, and I think there's been a significant payoff. I think the technology center, I think that there's a need for that. Victoria College does an excellent job of training tradespeople for jobs, associate's degrees, getting people workforce ready. Business people are looking for that. You know, Caterpillar wants to make sure there's a workforce here before they're going to come here. The next company that comes after Caterpillar is going to have the same question. So I was real pleased to see that the Victoria College board and Tom Butler, who is the president, had the foresight and the leadership to vote to put that on the ballot. And again, that's on the ballot May 12th. We invite people to vote. Early voting starts April 30th. And again, we think it's important. And I'm sure, Dale, that when you're and Adrian are showing prospects around, and I know you guys do that regularly, it'll be very exciting. Hopefully we'll be successful with the Victoria College deal, that we can say that here's where our training and technology center is going to go. And so it does 2 things. One, it's an actual place where there's going to have machinists and welders and all these people can be trained, but also it shows that the community is investing in its future. So it's very exciting. I know that center, the operation of that basically is going to be funded by the businesses that are going to be sending people, but traditionally, you know, the communities provide the bricks and mortar for these types of operations at community colleges, and that's what we're being asked to do. So we hope people get out and vote. We think it's an important issue.
Well, thank you, Robert. You know, economic development is a very competitive game. And we are competing with communities across the nation for these new opportunities to bring new jobs to our community, as well as bringing new investment to our community. And so we have to have those assets that separate us from the competition. The Port of Victoria is one of those assets, just like the ability to be able to train employees with the Victoria College and how important that is. Robert, you mentioned investing in ourselves. If a company is going to come to your community and invest $200 million or $1 billion in a new facility, they want to know that the community is also investing in themselves so that they're a sound community, not just today, but 20 years and 30 years from now, because those investments that the companies are making are going to be here for a long time. Thank you for being here with us today, and thanks for telling us about the Port of Victoria.